You're not strong, not in the way you believe. They sold you a lie, wrapped in noble words and fake humility. They taught you that weakness is virtue, that submission is admirable, and that silence makes you wise. And you bought it, without resistance. It's not your fault. From the moment you were born, they trained you to bend your head, to feel guilty for your instincts, to apologize for your ambition. They told you that wanting more is selfish, that confidence is arrogance, and that success is dangerous. They made you ashamed of your hunger, ashamed of your drive, ashamed of your fire. And the worst part? You believed it. You wore it like a badge, convinced that shrinking yourself made you good. But it didn't. It made you small. It made you forget the strength buried in your bones. It made you deny the wildness that still pulses beneath your skin. And now you call fear prudence, and call silence compassion. But all of it, and is just your surrender dressed in gold. You've spent years hiding your truth to protect others from discomfort, lowering your gaze so no one would feel threatened by your light, biting your tongue so they wouldn't call you arrogant. But Nietzsche would have seen through it all. He would have called it what it is: moral slavery, a code written by the weak to restrain the strong, a system designed to reward obedience and punish brilliance. Because when someone dares to rise, they become a mirror, and no one likes the reflection that exposes their cowardice. You live inside that system now. You smile when you want to scream. You say, it's okay, when everything inside you is breaking. You've traded truth for acceptance, greatness for comfort. And worst of all, you've convinced yourself that's normal. But it's not. You were never meant to be tame. You think your silence is kindness. You think your restraint is wisdom. But they're just chains. Chains that someone else wrapped around you, and that you've learned to hold tightly as if they were part of you. They told you to be humble, but what they meant was, don't shine too much. They told you to be compassionate, but what they wanted was your submission. They taught you that to want more was greedy, and to speak your truth was selfish. And now you carry this inherited guilt like a second skin. Every time you feel the desire to rise, you bury it beneath a layer of shame. Every time you feel anger, hunger, passion, you censor it, label it dangerous. But it's not dangerous. It's power. And that's why they fear it. Because power in the wrong hands threatens the order, and power in the right hands exposes the lies. That's why the world turns its back on those who choose strength. Not because they are cruel, but because they're free. And freedom is offensive. It forces others to face the prison they chose. When one man refuses to kneel, it forces everyone else to question why they ever did. And most people would rather crucify the free than admit their own chains. So they'll resist your rise. Not with open violence, but with doubt, with guilt, with subtle attacks dressed as advice. They'll call you arrogant, reckless, unrealistic. Not because you are, but because you remind them of who they chose not to become. They'll tell you to slow down, to be grateful, to stay humble. But you weren't born to shrink. You were born to stretch, to devour, to burn. And if they can't handle your fire, let them freeze in their own silence. This isn't about ego. This is about reclaiming what was always yours. And it starts when you stop asking for permission to be powerful. They won't understand your vision. They'll prefer to attack rather than accept they may have lived a lie. That's what Nietzsche called the path of the Übermensch. Not a destination, but a relentless transformation. An evolution that never asks for approval. It's not about reaching the top and saying, I made it. It's about burning and rebuilding, again and again. Breaking every wall that was handed to you. Refusing to inherit limits from people who never tested their own. That path is lonely. Not because you're meant to be alone, but because before you find your tribe, you must become someone worthy of being found. And that means choosing isolation over imitation. Look around you. Who do you spend your time with? Do they challenge you, push you forward? Or do they anchor you with fear, with small talk, with fragile egos that crack when you grow? You can't build greatness in a circle of comfort. If your circle doesn't stretch you, it's not a circle, it's a cage. And here's the hard truth. You may have to leave it behind. People, beliefs, habits, everything that holds you back must die. True strength isn't just about enduring pain. It's about releasing what weakens you, about letting go of the parts of yourself that no longer serve your rise. Not gently, not someday. Now, because the person you are today cannot carry you into the future you dream of. You must outgrow him. You must shatter her. You must rip that skin off and step into the fire. Rising means rebirth, and rebirth is never soft. It's violent. It's disorienting, like tearing through yourself with your bare hands. But it's the only way to become what you've never dared to be. No one tells you this. Real change hurts, not because of the effort, but because of what it forces you to confront. You have to look directly at what you've become, at the version of you shaped by fear, by conformity, by years of small betrayals against yourself. You've built a self that was easy for others to accept, a version that didn't disturb, didn't shine too bright, didn't question too loudly. And every time you whispered, "I'm just like this," you were protecting a fragile lie, a lie called identity. But identity isn't carved in stone. It's not a sentence. It's a choice you make every day. And if you don't challenge it, it becomes a prison. You keep repeating the same story, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Look deeper. How many of your thoughts are truly yours? How many of your fears are inherited? How many limits have you swallowed without ever tasting resistance? Most people never ask these questions. They live on autopilot, comfortable, numb, asleep. But if you're still here, it's because something in you refuses to die quietly. Something in you is hungry for more, for truth, for freedom. That part of you doesn't want comfort. It wants resurrection. And resurrection comes with fire. You don't get to become who you're meant to be by gently rearranging the furniture of your past. You have to burn the house down, tear off the mask, step naked into the unknown. There's no map, no certainty, no applause, just you and the abyss, and the decision to jump. Because it's not about going back, it's about going forward, even if it costs you everything you were. And when they ask what happened to you, why you don't play by their rules anymore, just smile. Because they'll never understand what it means to be reborn. Now, you're standing at the edge of everything you've ever known. One step back returns you to comfort. One step forward throws you into chaos. But only in chaos can you find what's real. You were told to fear uncertainty, taught that change is dangerous, that you must find yourself and stay there forever, as if identity were a fixed shape instead of an unfolding process. But you're not a finished product. You never will be. The self is not a statue. It's a flame, and that flame must constantly devour what no longer serves it in order to survive. Nietzsche said it clearly. Become who you are. Not who you were, not who they expect you to be, but the person buried under layers of obedience, silence, and self-doubt. And to do that, something in you must die every single day. Old beliefs, outdated dreams, echoes of other people's expectations. You have to bury what you've outgrown, or it will rot inside you. Most people never do. Not because they can't, but because they're terrified of what they'll lose. The truth, they fear loneliness more than mediocrity. they'd rather stay accepted than evolve. When you start changing, they won't cheer. They'll mock you. They'll say you've lost your way. But the truth is, you've finally found it. You've stopped pretending, and they can't stand that kind of clarity. Because if you make it out, if you rise, it means they could have too. And that truth burns. It forces them to face the life they've chosen to endure instead of transform. So yes, they'll resist you. But resistance is proof you're breaking through. And if you keep going, eventually, you'll stop needing their permission altogether. You'll walk alone. Not because no one understands, but because you've become someone rare enough to walk your own path. Real change doesn't come with celebration. It comes with isolation. You'll walk through silence before you ever hear applause. And in that silence, you'll face your deepest fears, the ones you've avoided your entire life. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being too much. The fear of being alone in your truth. But what you'll discover is that fear isn't your enemy. It's your compass. It points directly to what you must confront, what you must dissolve, what you must transcend. Because only by moving through fear do you become untouchable, not because you feel no pain, but because you stop being ruled by it. And here's the secret no one told you. Freedom doesn't come from removing pain. It comes from learning how to hold it without losing yourself, from choosing who you want to be in the presence of chaos. You've spent years avoiding discomfort, hoping peace would arrive when life became easier. But life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. And strength isn't built in comfort. It's forged in fire. You'll have to watch parts of you fall apart. You'll have to feel the grief of letting go of who you thought you were. But in that collapse, you'll find something sacred, something more honest than any version of you that came before, because most people live in borrowed identities, puppets of old narratives, victims of expectations that never belong to them, and the only way out is to cut the strings. So cut them. Let it all fall. Let them say what they will. Let the old world call you lost, because only those who dare to lose themselves can ever truly be found. They told you to find yourself. But what they meant was, stay small, as if who you are is a finished sculpture instead of a living, breaking, growing force. But to become what you're meant to be, you have to let go of everything you were told you are. You must question every belief that kept you safe, but stagnant. You must doubt the voice that whispers, "This is just who I am." Because that voice doesn't come from your soul. It comes from your fear. And that fear wears many masks. It calls itself logic, humility, realism. But beneath them all, it's just resistance. Resistance to the death of an old self. The truth is, you won't become the next version of you by thinking about it. You have to tear off the skin. You have to feel the burn. You have to become the fire. That's the part no one prepares you for. Real transformation is brutal. It means walking away from everything that once made you feel safe. Not because it's wrong, but because you've outgrown it. Friends won't understand. Family might resist. They'll tell you you've changed as if that's a crime. But change is not betrayal. Change is birth. And birth always comes with blood. You were never here to stay the same. You're not meant to live inside the walls built by someone else's fears. You're meant to break them. And when you do, the ones still inside will call you dangerous. Let them. Let them call you whatever they want. You're not here to be understood. You're here to become. And becoming will always offend those who've chosen not to. So keep going. Walk through the fire. Strip away the false layers. And when you reach the other side, don't explain your glow. just keep walking. Now you're standing at the threshold. One more step back, and you return to the comfort that's killing you. One more step forward, and everything you know about yourself burns. But in that fire, you finally breathe. You can close this now. Pretend none of it mattered. Return to your routine, your mask, your numbness. But something inside you has already cracked, and no matter how you try to seal it, it will keep bleeding truth. Because that's how awakening works. Once you've tasted it, even for a moment, you'll never fit inside the old version of yourself again. Every time you lie, you'll feel it. Every time you settle, something inside will scream. And that scream is not pain. It's the sound of the self you buried, digging its way back to the surface. You'll try to distract yourself. You'll try to be normal. But the knowing won't leave you alone. It never does. You've seen too much now. You've remembered what you could be. And that's the worst kind of torment. Not failure, but the memory of potential you chose not to chase. That gap becomes your ghost. It haunts every decision. So here's the truth. No one's coming to give you permission. No one's going to save you. The only one who can change this story is you. Not with declarations, but with action. Relentless, sacred, uncomfortable action. So close your eyes. See the version of yourself that doesn't bow, that doesn't shrink, that doesn't apologize for their fire. And now, ask yourself, would they recognize you or walk away? If the answer stings, then it's time. Time to become. Time to burn. Time to rebuild with no ceiling, no leash, no script. Leave a comment that says, I am not here to fit in. I'm here to rise. Not for me. For you. For the day you come back and remember the exact moment when you stopped surviving and started becoming. And if this message shook something in you, if it woke up a fire, then subscribe. Because what we're building here isn't content. It's a rebellion, and you are already part of it.